Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L. Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 383. Guys, I recorded this video once. The microphone was not working, but we're here to do it again. I'm not gonna lie, I'm much more tired now. Anyway, I hope everyone's okay. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone's safe. You know, scary world out there. But we're here to talk about Hero Academia. Let's escape for a bit and criticize Hero Academia. Except not really. Not really criticism. At this point, Hero Academia, I think, is just a learning opportunity. But you guys all know my opinion on this. Anyway, let's get into Hero Academia. And we're starting with the white page because Shonen Jump continues attacking the channel. So, not the newest videos, but like they keep finding old ones. Anyway, this chapter is a gigantic flashback, and I'm not gonna lie to you, that was rather disappointing when you're like waiting for the spoilers, because my hope was that we were only gonna get like six pages of it, but no, it's pretty much the entirety of the chapter. When you take a step back and you really look at it, if you were reading this in a volume as opposed to week by week after 2 weeks of a sudden break, which not Horikoshi's fault, he was probably sick. You know, when you read in a volume all in a straight run, it's pretty obvious. You're going to be thankful for it, right? It's like there's no way around it. You're going to be thankful for it. Why? Because this is pretty much Mina's moment. So Mina is getting stuff, right? So yeah, when you're reading in a volume, obviously you're going to be happy about it because it's like, yeah, I want Mina to get something. Of course, when you're looking at it from the week by week perspective, you know, there's the anticipation aspect to it, and that makes it a little bit disappointing, but overall, this is really important for the full story effect when you do a final read-through of Hero Academia. Like, probably when you see this in the anime, it's probably going to run really well, just because the anime doesn't deal with the same problems that the weekly manga does. But yeah, it's just one of those moments, again, where it reads better in the volume, most likely. Like, once time passes, you'll be okay with it. You know, in terms of, like, general discussion, we could talk about a lot. We could go into a lot of theory, because really what you see here with this chapter is just generally the logistical issues that I talk about in the videos very often. It's just like there's a lot of things going on, and the author wants to cover them. He wants to make sure everyone gets a moment like Mina. We've seen that with the way he's done other things. In this chapter, a commenter White Despair pointed out that it's very rushed. And what he means by that is, like, you know, we see Makia all of a sudden attacking, and I'll point out the page where it happens, but you don't really see the whole transition. Essentially, you got a battlefield condensed into one chapter, and if there is a victim, it is pretty much Mina, because I doubt Mina's going to get any significant moments after this point. This was her show on this particular chapter. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But anyway, the thing with the rushing, what's going to be really interesting is that right now it looks very clear that the author has a mission. The mission is, I want to showcase all my characters one last time. And then the Class 1A in particular, Class 1A needs to get moments. If we get to a point where he starts sacrificing the leftover Class 1A characters and we don't get their moments, that's the point where you know that something went wrong in the planning stages and he just can't keep doing that anymore. Honestly, the author has a really big challenge here, because he needs to maintain a certain level of symmetry across all of Class 1A in order to make this work thematically, or like work in a big picture sense. Now, we're not seeing that here. What we're seeing here in this really brief thing that Mina gets, what we're seeing here is that he does want to make sure the Class 1A characters get at least what Jiro got. Or I guess, like, right now Mina might be the new example of, like, this is the bare minimum. We'll have to see. But it's going to be really interesting. There is one more thing that I kind of want to talk about what this chapter has going against it, because I do love talking about the logistical issues. The problem with the final war has always been there's only a few major battlefields, and how is the author going to make other battlefields interesting? He has a whole variety of tricks. And really, when you look at it, what happened here is kind of this, like, it's structured similarly to what happened with Shoji, where you have Shigaraki scream, and then you go over to the spinner thing, because the spinner thing was happening in the past, and then, you know, we went through 3 chapters and we got back to the present to see, like, right after the scream, Kurogiri appears, right? when you had those chapters, it didn't feel as underwhelming as, like, you know, like you're losing that little bit of hype when you're looking at the spoilers. It didn't feel as underwhelming, but there were actually some really critical differences between the shoji battlefield, not counting the chapter content, or sorry, not counting the chapter lengths or the chapters that were used to depict it, not counting that, but more with the premise. So very quickly, what I have here for you, this is pretty much the situation before we go into the flashbacks. When you're looking at the shoji battlefield, right when Shigaraki does his scream, what do you know about the shoji battlefield? Nothing. There's nothing known about the shoji battlefield. When you're doing the Kirishima battlefield, right before you transition over to it, what do you know about the Kirishima battlefield? Fundamentally, you know that Kirishima was okay because he was on Makia, you know that Shinzo was okay because he was on Makia, and you know Makia was controlled because he attacked All for One. What ends up happening here is you go into the Kirishima battlefield with a lot of tension diffusers. Let's call them that. A lot of tension diffusers. And I think this is ultimately what might impact the week by week experience. It's because you know how many things are going to be okay. What really happens here is that the author ends up making a bet. His bet is the readers will enjoy knowing how we got from point A to point B. Now, of course, some readers will enjoy that. Other readers who are very excited might think, "Oh, come on, man! Like, we knew all these things," and you know, so that's why you ultimately have a situation where the two flashbacks. That's like the pros and cons to doing it the way that the author did it. There's some things that are diffused when you look at the chapter. You know, when you're seeing Shinzo being assaulted by the slime, it's like, well, should I care? Like, when I see it, I don't really care because I know Shinzo's going to be okay. When I see Makia being unleashed, I don't necessarily care because I know they're going to make it anyway, right? A lot of the conclusions are foregone, and that ultimately takes away from some of the experience. Now, the other thing here was that Mina's situation was actually unclear. You didn't know what was going on with Mina, and I actually remember the week that we had Makia arriving, commenter Tai was worried about Mina. Now, if you remember my comment, it was you saw shadows on Makia indicating that there was probably other students on top of Makia, and Mina might have been okay. Interestingly, as of this chapter, you don't know if Mina is actually at this battlefield now, but that's why when you go into the chapter, like what Horikoshi ultimately ended up doing, by focusing on Mina, he focused on the one obscure factor in all of this, because you didn't know what was going on with Mina. But when you have the panels of Shinzo struggling, it's like, well, this doesn't really matter because the time's already passed, we know what happened. So overall, what you're really seeing here is that if you see some people being disappointed, you can break it down. You can build a case of why this is happening, and a lot of it has to do with, well, I already knew they were going to be okay, so why would I spend time getting invested in that, right? Two very different kind of readers. Readers that like going along the journey, and like readers who are focused on the results. That's pretty common. That's usually the dichotomy between readers, results versus the journey. Actually, that's also a big thing that pops up in philosophy. You know, some people talk about enjoying the journey. Other people talk about, you know, like the results justify the means. So you know, you can really tell a lot about a person based on what they value more. Anyway, that's general notes. I would love to just go in for another 10 minutes talking about the intricacies of the choices made here, the pros and cons to different approaches. What would have been the most ideal way of doing this to prevent like maybe a dip in weekly excitement? The best way to do this would have been to have, because like ultimately what you want is to maintain the surprise at all stages. What you would have done is that sometime when the Dobby fight ends, because we know how far back we went on this one, sometime when the Dobby fight ends, you show the Kirishima battlefield, and you cliffhanger the Kirishima battlefield really hard, such that you leave that battlefield with Shinzo being assaulted by the slime villain. You leave it with Makia about to get out. Maybe you do a strong moment for Kirishima and Mina, just to like get it kind of hype. But yeah, you ultimately want to leave that battlefield with a lot of cliffhangers, such that when you come into the Makia moment of him approaching All for One, readers still don't know what's going on. And then you show the reveal, and then you can go back to the battlefield, because now it's like, well, I've been sitting with this cliffhanger for like dozens of weeks. What happened in the battlefield? Like, how did everyone survive? And you can show the rest of the story, right? That would be like a way to kind of like move it around. But I don't know if you noticed, but I mentioned there was a lot of weeks in there. Now, maybe not dozens, but there was a lot of weeks in between Dobby's defeat and now. For you to be able to do that, you need to know exactly what you're doing in the story, and you need to be able to pick up on those plot threads. And given that Hero Academia is a week-by-week story, and given how much stress is going on in the week-to-week production of these kind of things, and given Horikoshi's injuries that he seems to be prone to taking, yeah, that was kind of a tall order. And it's also like you also have the stress of like that was a low-value battlefield that not a lot of people are excited about. So, you know, it's always a lot of decisions going into these kind of things, and I hope that readers appreciate that. Again, this is relatively hard. It's really easy to comment on things after the fact because you see you see the results, so you can adjust, right? But yeah, all right. Overall, let's get into the chapter. There are some really good moments in the chapter, and some moments I'm just so excited to talk about. So let's get into it. Okay, so the chapter was titled Meek Spirits. Sorry, I'm just moving her along. Mina got a really good shot here. I really liked it. Also, just noticed very quickly that her horns were still curved. I don't know why the man like kept doing the horns as a symbol of maturity, but whatever. Moving on. There's nothing really important here other than to say that this is going to be a Mina chapter. Okay, so page 2 officially tells us what's going on. We find out this is after word spread about Todoroki taking down Dabi. Really important that they mention this, just because like the timeline's kind of finicky here with Gigantomachia and him running over there. Anyway, I want to point out that we have Mineta on this shot. Mineta being there, that's pretty much... He's gonna get a moment, you know, like he has to get a moment too, because it's Mineta. It's Horikoshi's favorite character, like at least pre-Kamino. So he needs to get a moment. You have Juzo coming in here and mentioning that his quirk is useless against people in the air. No duh, that makes sense. That's just the author helping the readers along. Nothing wrong with that. Horikoshi knows his fan base more than we do. He's the one that has to deal with fan letters. And then we have the PLF member. Interestingly, he can float, he can fly. I assume there's some kind of gas mechanic. Given that he has that mask, there must be some kind of gas mechanic. I don't know how it works. Interestingly, the effects for the sound that we had here, it made it look like this was force coming out, but like I guess it was just really hard to depict the fact that this was sound waves and nothing else. He was also using a high pitch, so I really wonder what exactly the team was hearing here. Yeah, no, the art's just really interesting because like it makes the sound wave looks like because of all the debris, it makes it look like the sounds were like peeling stuff off the building, which like isn't correct. But yeah, really interesting. Okay, so we have this guy gloating. So this was really good because we found out finally what was the purpose of this device. It was just simply an ultra high frequency emitter that just pierces through the walls. He got to have like, oh, okay, let's just be clear. The only reason this guy gets speaking lines is because he happens to be connected to Midnight's death. That's the only reason he got speaking lines. That's the only reason he's like valuable to some degree. But like nothing else is really important here in terms of this character. Anyway, he's not an important character. He just happens to be like the guy that Mina is the most obsessed with. Overall, yeah, this like he came with good gear, man. It was good gear. Okay, on page 4 we have Mount Lady reliving her trauma of getting beat by Gigantomachia. We see some cool little things here. I want to point out that Ray, I think that's her name, Poltergeist or whatever, Emily, that's her hero name. Rule used her quirk to make the wrench bigger, and Emily poltergeisted it up towards Mount Lady. So that was pretty cool. Given the way that Mount Lady was like holding it here, you can see the little vibration lines. It looks like she was struggling to lift that. So she goes in and tries to swat a bunch of flies with a giant wrench. Interesting approach. I don't know if she knows, but flies are very hard to catch in general, so hope that works. Page 5 just cuts to this chase and shows us Machia just obliterating out of the restraints and coming from Mount Lady, thereby making her relive all her worst nightmares all at once. Now there was some commentary here. I think it was Mina probably thinking it. The big guy from the standpoint of ordinary people embodies pure psychological scarring. So interesting, because like Mina has connections to Machia as well, right? Like Machia probably psychologically scarred Mina when she was still in middle school. Now, I always talk about how when Machia's around, it's pretty much Kirishima and Mina are guaranteed to get moments with him. And people like sometimes really underestimate how traditional Horikoshi is with his setups. But like Machia is Mina and Kirishima's villain. Like that's the reality of it. I don't know how many times you need to see like Mina being like having Machia as being someone that works off of her rhetoric for people to like realize that this is her villain along with Kirishima's villain. But yeah, no, like whenever I said in the past that Mina's getting a moment because of Machia, it's purely narrative force. There's no other reason other than purely narrative force. Like those three characters have been connected since before the series started. Now, this page is where, like for me, some things start to fall apart. And you know, that's not referencing how there's things actively falling apart in the panel. The first thing that you see here is that you have Horikoshi reminding people of this panel, the escort mission's done. So this is pretty much Horikoshi had a seed. What he wants you to know is like, hey guys, I've been planning this for a long time. And then you find out that it was, we warped Shinzo to this location and kept him away from the battlefield, all without the villains catching on. That sounds really good on paper, but like when you think about it, it's like, why didn't you warp Shinzo to the hidden location? Why did you spend someone escorting him? You're warping everyone all over the place. You couldn't warp Shinzo a little bit away. And given that you're so close to the battlefield such that Kirishima can run the moment that Maka comes out, like, how far did you escort him in the first place? Like, was it even worth it? Because he's not very far away. And also, like, why not hide him next to Makia so that the moment he wakes up, Shinzo can take control of it immediately instead of putting him out in a place where he was vulnerable anyway. Like, if you're going to put him... Like, look, thing is, 101 ways that you can defend Horikoshi here. I don't care if you do. Honestly, if you do, it's because you like the story. I don't care. But, like, there's some logical defects here. There's definitely 100% logical defects here, such that you need to come up with a lot of explanations to be able to justify all the things that happen here. In terms of the timing, in terms of the location, in terms of why even bother doing it this way? Yeah, no, like, a lot of question marks. Now, I can steal man as well. I can, like, try and defend Shinzo here as well. Like, the reason you warp him at the moment of everyone warping him is because you don't want All For One to catch on for whatever insane reason you can come up with. You don't want him catching on. Why is Shinzo just so close to the battlefield anyway that you needed to have an escort mission to move him? Like, how many feet away is he from the Makia encampment? Can't be that far. Don't know about that. But point is, like, this is kind of shaky. All right. One thing that protects Horikoshi is that you can't tell distance in the manga, but like logically he can't be that far away. This might be a thing where like Horikoshi maybe like set up the escort mission line to have like a bigger kind of thing, but he had to modify it. So pretty much what he did was like he threw a ball in the air. He didn't have maybe concrete plans for it, just a general idea, and then now he's kind of solidifying it, and it's like, okay, now he just has to make it work. Yeah, no, like it's a bit of a finicky line. But he, like, again, like, Horikoshi's very good at covering his tracks, or, like, trying to, like, really when you're an author, what you want to do is you want to give your defenders enough ammunition to defend you. Because as long as your defenders can point out something you did that showed some amount of forethought, they'll get a lot of mileage on that, right? And it'll like, it's very good ammunition when you start arguing, if you give your defenders something that they can use. I want you all to know, I do hear how I speak. I do know that, like, maybe it's a bit ridiculous to talk about, like, story bits as ammunition, but this is the reality of the world. You see it everywhere. You see it, like, all forums. People will defend their authors people will come up with the most insane reasons. As long as it's possible, they'll come up with it because they like the story and they don't like people like berating their story. That's okay. You know, that's how it goes. It's just like when you're an author, when Horikoshi defends himself, that's what he's doing. He's pretty much trying to cover his tracks so that whenever someone like brings up a stupid question, someone can come in and just answer it like, well, bro, if you just read the story, you would see that this is what he was thinking. And that's why ultimately when it comes to the authors that spot where their weaknesses are, or like where like the leaps in their logic are, they're the best. And I think if you've been watching me for a long time, and like if you watch the Shokei no Soma reviews, you know my general perspective is like if an author can spot where the problem is and he can address it, even if it's a joke of a response, it's still better than nothing. Like at that point, if the author addresses it and makes a joke of it, it's like, yeah, okay. Like what else can you really do? It's like in One Piece, when the author says like, yeah, Sanji gets to have fire powers because like his heart burns hotter than fire. It's like, well, shit. What else? What else? I can't call it stupid. Like it's the reason's right there. It's because his heart burns hotter than fire. Like that's how it goes. You know, like that's just how it goes. Anyway, that aside, going over to the slime villain. So the slime villain is one of those characters that he's here because he's the slime villain. I think it was Kayla, commenter Kayla, and other people too, who were trying to, or not trying, they like put some parallels to it, of the slime and like how interesting it was that it was Shinzo that ultimately was the one that was attacked by the slime. Because people were saying that, Izuku and Baku was going to get a return to the slime villain. And one thing you have to appreciate is that Horikoshi is not that basic, you know? Huh, I got like a... Huh. Anyway, Horikoshi is not that basic, so it's always interesting to see little twists. It's Horikoshi's little twists that always make things a little bit unpredictable. Anyway, I forget the exact reasoning that those guys mentioned about Shinzo and why it was interesting that it was ultimately Shinzo that was being controlled here. I'm trying to remember, but I can't. You know, if you guys got the reasons, put it down below. I believe ya. Anyway, for this whole thing, the villain gives us this giant, like, a giant spiel about, like, yo, bro, these guys are crazy. I'm not gonna fight for real. No way, man. Now, I do have to wonder why he felt the need to have to explain his whole, like, thought process to Kirishima. I also have to wonder why he chose to hide in a kid so aggressively and just not leave. But, like, one of the big lines here is specifically... sneak away. The sneak away line is interesting because it says like, oh, he went somewhere where no one else was. Therefore, Shinzo's hiding place was good because technically no one else was there. Okay, Horikoshi, I get it, but the fact that a villain can find it with just a little bit of creative thinking kind of invalidates it as a good hiding place. It kind of like, you're using a very simple assumption, and it reveals how stupid it is because of the very active failure that you see here. Again, though, the man's covering for himself. He's very good. This is very smart, very smart. It's just like the failure of the logic itself is what invalidates the logic and why it says like this was a little bit of a silly thing to do. Like, you can't say that this was a good idea. And of course, you know, the defender will say, well, like, Shinzo only got caught because some guy was trying to run away. Look, all you need is a villain with a sensory quirk, and Shinzo would have been an easy target to pick off. All you need is a guy with enough bloodlust and a sensory quirk, and it would have been over, right? Like, this was not good. Like, Shinzo, at least dig a hole and hide in the ground Shigaraki style. Like, come on. Like, I'm surprised that no one learned the value of the hole strategy. Like, Shigaraki escaped missiles with the hole strategy, alright? Like, look, it's a perfect strategy. We then go back into the weak are meant to suffer and submit. It's the law of the jungle. Might makes right. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but this is pretty much the kind of world that the PLF members were going for. Behind all their propaganda, they ultimately went with, yeah, whoever's the strongest kind of gets to rule. That's how it goes. So this is always the interesting stuff because people always underestimate how complicated society is, such that, you know, the weak are meant to suffer and submit. But, you know, the weak also can sometimes be the smart ones. And the smart ones, it all depends on how you define what weak is. When you say weak, are you, like, really talking about, like, the power of your quirk? So, like, very direct brute force power? Or are you also putting in the power of the mind here, right? Because, like, with the mind you get technology, and with technology you have arsenic bombs, right? Honestly, if Momo just had the right mindset, she could be the queen. Like, she's the only person that can flat out ruin All for One's dreams of Monopoly. Anyway, this rhetoric is what the PLF always was. I'm not sure if you don't know this, but this has been clear for a very long time, so this is consistent. Good on Horikoshi for bringing it up and just not mincing words with it. Okay, anyway, we go further, and it's like the authority of the strong is self-justified. So this is pretty much saying like, bro, I'm a dictator. I'm a dictator because I'm strong. I can do it because I can beat you up, so take it. That's who the PLF always has been. They like talk about liberation, but it's really, I want to be able to do stuff, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do stuff because I'm stronger than you. They don't really realize that All for One is like a whole different level of power. He's gonna make them all into little bitches if he really wants to. So like, yeah, no, this is just like pretty basic. They get ultimately reduced to their main point because like they're at the end of their rope. It's just like Horikoshi's villainizing them more. He's making this stuff more apparent just to make sure that everyone's on the same side of like the PLF's pretty stupid. I do like the juxtaposition that was going on here, where you have like Kirishima struggling, and Kirishima is traditionally one of the weakest Class 1A members, just because his quirk can't really do a lot. So that was a pretty good juxtaposition. You have him saying that the advent of the liberation era, pretty much I get to do whatever I want because no one else can tell me to do so. You could even say like the PLF sees the lawmakers as weaklings, so why do they have to listen to weaklings? And it's like, well, bro, like, it's because you all are very prone to being manipulated by psychopaths. Anyway, after that we go into the really big moment of Mina coming in and running acid into Makia. let's just like also just very quickly acknowledge that Mount Lady here, this sight of those claws coming down and melting, that's gonna be in her dreams forever. She is so lucky that that acid is sticky and doesn't like drip on her when she's doing that, because this shit melted stone, man. That would have melted through her. She looks like she's about to be beaten. Holy crap, she looks like a beaten woman, like just barely trying to cover her face. God damn it, man. That was poor girl. Okay, so here we see the effects of like melting away Machia's claws. We have this detail right here. So this is really important because Mount Lady needs to tell us what exactly is different about this acid, because the acid isn't something you can actually see. So she needs to tell us that. So Horikoshi, very smart, because otherwise without this line people say like, oh, it was pretty much nothing. And then we have the other very critical line, which was this one right here. That much will take a lot out of you. So this is just pretty much saying, hey, Mina has a limit. She's hitting all her limits right now. This is going to run her out. She might not be coming back into the fight. If she doesn't come back into the fight, it's because she's still tired. She could still go plus ultra though. But you know, this is just Horikoshi setting up that if she can't come back, this is why. And now the line that I love the most. I had Bakugo and Todoroki fill me in on their special training method. That training method, when it comes to increasing the strength and volume of something you produce from your body, there's only one place that training method could have come out of. It had to be Endeavor's training method. So, Mina went to work with other heroes. And this is like a rhetoric that's worse in the anime, because the anime, while the boys are busting their asses with Endeavor, being run like just tired, people like Ochako and Tsuyu are off on a beach vacation. Alright? Like, and then I think in the OVA, a bunch of other people were playing baseball or something. This girl went on an internship with like, what did she take away from that? I think she came up with a few things. I think she got Yoroi. So she came out with a little bit of the, she came out with some of the, I think it was team tactics, if I recall. It was her, Aoyama, and Invisible Girl? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm being a little bit aggressive here. But it is a little bit silly. It is a little bit silly that ultimately Mina had to go to Bakugo and Todoroki to get a better training method, because like her first hero kind of failed her and didn't really... Well, it was... Honestly, what happens is like Endeavor is really just that high level. That's really what it comes down to. Endeavor is just like a whole other like area of power. No other hero can really compare to him. It's kind of silly to say that anyone else can compare to him. And this is the product of it. Now, there's actually something really, really important here. It's specifically this. I couldn't pull this off last time and so many people died. All that carnage and destruction. I had Bakugo and Todoroki fill me in on their special training method. So what's happening here is that Mina is saying that, well, the progression here is that she didn't have the training method, and then the Maki situation happens, and it seems that that Maki situation is what inspires her to go the extra mile and ask for help. So I really can't, there's just so much going into this. You know how I mentioned in one of the previous videos that only a handful of that 1A students have actually been in like serious conflict. Like it's like Ira, Bakugo, Izuku, Todoroki, Kirishima, Tsuyu, Ochako. Like only a few of them have actually been in active combat zones. So when you come to Mina, what you're really seeing here is that this is her, like that Maki moment was her moment of like what Izuku and Bakugo had back when they were in middle school. It was like really seeing like how miserable things can get. That was the moment that she like stepped up her game because she realized this isn't a game anymore, right? So really what you're seeing here is that this is the effect of seeing combat. She realized that, much like Izuku, that she wasn't doing the best she could be doing. And a lot of it's the same thing as Izuku. But you have to remember, like, Mina is the Izuku archetype. Mina has a similar progression as Izuku. Mina suffered from the same problem. She didn't have anyone telling her what her maximums were. And then with Izuku, Izuku got the benefit of getting All Might. Mina didn't get someone that was really suited to her particular style. And she got a pretty big wake-up call in Makia, and only after that did she realize she could be doing more. So Izuku and Mina have very similar I wasn't doing the best until I realized I could do more. What you really just have to take away from that is that the Makia moment is Mina's maturation point, and you know, that's the big kick in the butt she needed. Unfortunately, though, like a lot of it's also the author doesn't use Mina very well, so it's not a surprise that she ends up being used like this. Anyway, Mina goes from attacking Makia to also attacking the guy that was messing with Shinzo. And what you really have to wonder here is that, well, if Mina was able to lob a lot of acid and then run all the way at the same time to where Shinzo was, Shinzo could not have been that far away from where Makia like was ripping Mount Lady apart. Alright. Anyway, Slime Villain tries to get away. Shinzo stops him with his power. And then you have Mina going with this point. Mina is using a flashback. And this flashback technically happens a long time ago. So she has this thing running around in her head, and it becomes valid when Midnight's classes happen. Or like, sorry, when Midnight's death happens. It's really interesting with Mina. Mina is a character that's affected by flashbacks. This happened, and I know this happened because I was doing the Mina Kirishima shipping video. But Mina was affected. Mina and Kirishima took on a whole new dimension in interactions after Kirishima's flashback. Before that, they only just happened to be in like a few panels together, but they were never like, and you had like little detail that they were in the same school, but it wasn't as meaningful as after the flashback that we get from Kirishima's middle school days. What that really just means is that Horikoshi he makes a flashback and then he modifies Mina to be compliant with the flashback instead of having Mina showing signs that the flashback happened and then revealing the flashback. It's a different way of approaching it. You know, it's a stylistic choice. I don't think there's any particular problems with the approach. It's just a stylistic choice. And it just makes the author's hand a little bit more apparent because you see the stark difference before and after this flashback that technically should have happened very early in the story. It's like you only really flesh it out when you do the flashback. If you do story writing, you might sometimes like make an outline that, oh, these characters have this particular past, and you leave it for like book 5, and then when you outline the flashback, there's so much more detail and nuance now that you're thinking through it, and it makes some moments before that just you kind of threw balls in the air hoping that it would kind of match up, but maybe sometimes it doesn't fit just perfectly well, so you have to like make new justifications if you're able to notice it. You know, it's a simple it's a simple problem that you can't really fault the guy, and that's why you don't really call it a weakness. Okay, so I actually like that Hori. I love that he really dived in on the fact that Mina is not a solo person. I really love that he dived in that she's pretty much a follow fashion, or like she's always in groups. That weakness makes me want to form packs and get close with people. This is really good. This is really clever. You might not notice, but this is him covering his butt again. He's pretty much saying like, hey guys, this was always in the plan. Mina was always a group person because this was the reason. Look, sometimes you're gonna be working and you will have your character like exhibiting a certain trait that you didn't really plan for, but then it's like, yeah, let's make this legit, right? It's a happy little accident, right? But no, this works. And if you look at what he does here, right, he puts in a lot of panels which show Mina with other people, which is just trying to reinforce this particular statement. So very clever. The way you counter this, if an author tries to do this on you, is that you pull all the counter examples. But the thing is, Mina is such a background character. Like, this is so foolproof. This is so foolproof. Like, good for him. Like, this was very clever. Very clever maneuver. Also, this shot right here, I'm pretty sure this is a shot from when they got put in the remedial courses for summer camp. I like that she puts that in there. Like, she didn't have a choice of that one, if I'm remembering correctly. Also, I didn't point out the moment where you see like Mina's horns have straightened, but like I don't think it really matters. It's such a weird detail. Her horns look horrible too, so like I'm not gonna go into it. Anyway, let's actually read what Mina's saying. I know all about fear because I'm weak. That weakness makes me want to form packs and get close with people. That goes for our side and your side too. That's what defines us, right? So I really do not like Mina trying to find commonality with random murderers. Like, it's personally not my thing. I understand that the point is that you need to see the humanity in the villains as well to, like, realize that they're humans because you can't deny them their humanity. But, like, you know, I think it's, overall, I think it's okay that she points out that these guys are weak and that's why they group together. because they're all weak. But like it overlooks that when Mina groups together, there's not like one dictator trying to take advantage of them. Whereas with these guys, it's like there is one dictator trying to take advantage of them. Like there's a little bit different, but you get the overall idea. Ultimately, you know, Horikoshi's trying to make a rhetoric work here. I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing out groupthink or group or like tribal lines kind of thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Anyway, you didn't have Shinzo's big thing pointing out that he learned stuff from Aizawa. It's pretty much just a tape to get close to Makia's ears, not really all that important. Okay, we go into page 14. We see overall a pretty good spread of Makia and Mount Lady attacking the people in the sky. She gets a kick on someone. Mount Lady is able to catch Shinzo because he's not able to stay on Makia's body. Then we have Horikoshi covering his butt again, because like there's no reason to say that Shinzo recreated his All for One's voice out loud, because like everyone that was in this plan probably knows that he could do it, because it was kind of critical that he be able to do this. Therefore, everyone must have known he could do this. The other really important line is that he's not competing with the frequency emitter, because like Shinzo's quirk puts people in altered states of perception, right? So that makes sense. You have Kirishima again reiterating why this was pretty dangerous for Mina. That being she is majorly dehydrated. And then I think you have a really great moment in general where Kirishima is talking about what Mina means to him. I think that was really, really great. Anyway, we finish that up. We go into later and we go and see that All for One is being... Man, what a popular guy, man. What a popular guy. I have this discussion with Jason Thomas pretty often about like All for One. How is it like he was able to rival All Might? And like I don't know if I mentioned this in this video, but I'll reiterate it here. I think it's become very clear. Like All Might is a spear, but All for One is a shield plus regenerative capabilities. Like when you look at it, ultimately, like All for One doesn't have the offensive power to put anyone down for realsies, but he's taking all these hits. That's that's the big thing. That's why All for One was able to survive against All Might. His survivability is All Might tier. That's what it ultimately comes down to. He's just very good at surviving. Like right now, he is holding back a whole bunch of people coming down on him at the same time. That's where All for One's strength is. You wouldn't really think it, but like yeah, All Might's the spear and All for One is the shield. That happens to regrow. Now at the end here we have some helicopters. Guys, I'll be honest with you. Didn't expect it. Didn't expect helicopters. Last thing I expected. Who is in the helicopter? Can't be villains, because who's left? Maybe reinforcements, that would be cool. Maybe All Might. Maybe international heroes. Maybe news people. But it can't be. It cannot be anything other than that. Like who else? It can't be reinforcements for All for One. That'd be ridiculous. Now, as we go into the future, what is the end game here? We still have to see Sero's battlefield. God knows how that's gonna go. But you know, sometimes I'm wondering, what if Shigaraki just appears at this battlefield and then we get a flashback of how he got there? You know, like that'd be surprising. I'm kind of thinking that's what's gonna happen. I don't want that to happen because I think Bakugo's gonna come back during a critical moment versus Shigaraki. But yeah, you know, like just really interesting. Also, I just want to point out, I just saw him again. This little guy right here, he's just tanking a hit from All for One. Whoever he is, bless you, good job. A random's tanking a hit, well, not tanking, blocking. Anyway, guys, I gotta go. I gotta stream. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This was a fun video. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.